Imagine this. One day you realize you've stopped asking questions about life, when once you were a child endlessly curious, but now you feel tired, discouraged, and even ready to give up on your dream of learning English. Have you ever noticed how children can ask the strangest, most impossible questions, and never feel embarrassed? A child might look you in the eyes and say, "Why do we have eyebrows? What if the sun forgets to wake up tomorrow?" And you, an adult with a mortgage and a coffee addiction, stand there with your brain melting like ice cream on a summer day. The truth is, when you were little, you were that child. Your mouth was a machine gun of curiosity. You asked about ants, about stars, about why grown-ups frown more than they laugh. But somewhere along the way, you hit the brakes. The questions got replaced with silence, politeness, and the endless background noise of, "Just get through the day." Scientists say that by the age of 4, a child asks about 300 questions per day. By adulthood, that number falls so low it can barely be counted. Not because the answers arrived, but because curiosity slowly got smothered under routine, fear of judgment, and the dull weight of being normal. And here's the ironic twist. The very skill that makes us better learners, better speakers, better thinkers, asking questions, is the same thing we've been trained to shut down. Your brain loves novelty. It thrives on the little sparks of why and what if. But silence? Silence is the brain's slow death that us owe today. We're going to follow the story of one Danish child who dared to ask too many questions. Through his little adventures in Copenhagen, you'll practice English listening, reading, and speaking, slowly, clearly, simply. But deeper than that, you'll confront a haunting truth. When did you stop asking about life? The endless curiosity. Picture this: a small boy in Denmark, about 6 years old, sitting on the floor with socks that never quite match. His name isn't important, because honestly, he could be you, years ago. Every single day, his world is powered by questions. Not toys, not cartoons, not even chocolate cake. Questions: why do birds not get lost in the sky? What happens to the rain after it touches the ground? Why does my grandma have lines on her face but not on her hands? These aren't random noises. They are the engines of his little brain stretching, flexing, demanding to grow. Neuroscientists love this stage. They say children's brains are like super sponges, absorbing language, shapes, and rules without even trying. The fuel? Curiosity. It's the biological equivalent of rocket fuel. Now, here's the funny part. Adults think kids are annoying when they ask too much. But actually, those constant whys are pure genius. Each one builds a tiny bridge between neurons. Imagine your brain like Copenhagen's famous canals. Every question is another bridge connecting two islands of thought. The more bridges, the easier it is to travel, aka, to think, to speak, to learn English without sweating bullets. But for the child, it's not science. It's fun. Curiosity is like oxygen. He breathes it naturally. He doesn't care if his question makes sense, or if someone rolls their eyes. He just asks, because asking is living, and here's the punchline. If curiosity is oxygen for children, then why do so many adults act like they're holding their breath? At the breakfast table. It's a chilly morning in Copenhagen. The smell of rye bread and coffee fills a tiny kitchen. A boy sits at the table, swinging his legs like a restless drummer. His parents are half awake, faces buried in steaming mugs, trying to survive another Monday. And then, it begins. Why is butter yellow and not white? He asks, spreading it unevenly on bread. His mother blinks. She doesn't know. Because cows, she mutters, hoping that will end it. But the boy isn't done. He looks at his father and fires another. Why do we eat breakfast in the morning, not at night? That's the moment his father puts down the cup, sighs, and stares at the ceiling like he's negotiating with the gods of patience. The boy smiles, completely unaware of the adult struggle happening across the table. To him, these questions are just warm-up exercises, like stretching before running a race. Here's what's fascinating. Researchers say that morning conversations shape how children think for the rest of the day. If they're met with curiosity, they carry energy. If they're shut down, they carry silence. Breakfast, then, isn't just about food, it's about feeding the mind. But most parents? They just want peace. They want to drink their coffee in quiet and not explain the history of bread before 7 a.m. And slowly, without even noticing, children get the signal. Questions are unwelcome. Curiosity becomes an interruption. And silence becomes survival. The boy at the table doesn't see that yet. He just asks, and asks, and asks. But if you listen closely, you can almost hear the invisible wall adults are already building. Stop. Enough. Be normal. Funny thing, though, normal is just another word for boring. Why is the sky blue? Every child eventually asks that question. You know the one. The question that has crushed parents across centuries, from Vikings to millennials. Why is the sky blue? Our Danish boy drops it casually on the walk to school, his small hand tucked inside his father's glove. The father freezes. His engineering degree, his years of work, his endless spreadsheets, none of it prepares him for this. He stammers, because sunlight and science stuff. The boy frowns. Not good enough. He wants the full story, not a half-baked TED Talk. Here's the science, simplified. Sunlight looks white, but it's actually all the colors mixed together. When it hits Earth's atmosphere, blue light scatters more because it has shorter waves. Boom, blue sky. That's the answer. But of course, no parent has time to say all that at 8:15 a.m. on a cold Copenhagen street. This is where the tragedy sneaks in. Adults don't fail because they don't know. They fail because they stop being curious. They accept because it just is, as a final answer. Kids don't buy that. They demand to peel life open like an orange, juice everywhere, sticky fingers and all. And here's the hilarious twist. The boy doesn't even care about the right answer. He just wants to keep the conversation alive. For him, the sky is not only blue, it's alive, mysterious, waiting for him to catch it in words. That's language practice at its purest, not grammar drills, but questions that stretch the tongue, the brain, the heart. The father, meanwhile, just hopes the boy doesn't ask about black holes before they reach the bus stop. Spoiler, he does. Curiosity is relentless. And thank goodness for that, because if not, life would just be one long, gray spreadsheet. The bus ride. The city bus hisses to a stop. Doors open, cold Danish air rushes in, and our boy climbs aboard with his father. The driver greets them with a tired nod, expecting silence, maybe a tack. But instead, boom, the first question lands. Why do buses always smell the same? The boy asks, loud enough for half the passengers to hear. A teenager snorts. An old lady hides a smile. The father looks like he wants to vanish into the seat cushions. The boy doesn't stop. He asks the driver, why are the seats blue, not red? He asks a stranger, where are you going? Why? He points at the ticket machine. Who invented this? Each word tumbles out like popcorn in a hot pan, uncontrolled, noisy, unstoppable. And here's the secret. This is language learning at its rawest. The boy is not just asking questions. He's practicing rhythm, tone, interaction. Psychologists call it social language development. Every why is a mini workout for his brain, training memory and courage at the same time. He's not afraid of mistakes. He's not afraid of people. Imagine learning English like that, asking out loud, even if you sound clumsy, even if people stare. That's how fluency grows. Meanwhile, the bus feels like a comedy stage. Some passengers roll their eyes. Others secretly enjoy the show. And the driver? He chuckles and says, I don't know, maybe because blue hides dirt better. The boy nods seriously, satisfied, for now. The irony is delicious. Adults pay for expensive courses to practice conversation, while children do it for free, right there on the bus, powered only by curiosity. By the time the bus stops at school, The father looks exhausted. The boy looks energized. Who do you think learned more on that ride? The teacher's dilemma. The classroom smells like chalk and wet jackets. 20 kids shuffle into their seats, buzzing with energy. The teacher, a kind woman with glasses slipping down her nose, writes today's lesson on the board, Seasons in Denmark. She expects silence. She does not get it. Our boy shoots his hand up before she even starts. Why do we have 4 seasons and not 5? He blurts. The teacher blinks, caught off guard. Well. Earth tilts on its axis. She begins, but he's already on to the next one. Then why doesn't Greenland have the same weather as us? It's close, right? The class giggles. The teacher sighs. Here's the truth. Schools are designed for answers, not questions. Lessons fit neatly into boxes. Questions, real questions, blow the lids off. Researchers call this the curiosity gap. Kids want to explore the unknown, but systems want to check the boxes. It's like putting fireworks in a shoebox and wondering why it explodes. The boy doesn't care about the system. He keeps firing. Why do leaves fall? Do trees get sad? If summer never ended, would we still need school? The teacher, bless her patience, tries to answer but eventually falls back on the classic adult escape hatch. That's not in the book. And here's the sad comedy. When adults say, not in the book, what they really mean is, not in my comfort zone. But curiosity was never meant to stay inside books. It was meant to spill, to overflow, to ask questions that can't be graded with a red pen. The other kids snicker, but a few listen with wide eyes. Maybe, just maybe, his questions light a spark in them too. Because one question, asked out loud, can do more for learning than 10 silent pages of homework. The teacher straightens her glasses, exhausted. The boy smiles, unstoppable. And somewhere between the chalk dust and the ticking clock, a battle quietly rages. Curiosity versus routine. Guess which side usually wins? The silence of adults. By the end of the week, the boy notices something odd. Every time he asks a question, the room gets heavier. His father sighs. His mother waves him off. The bus driver looks at the ceiling. The teacher changes the subject. One by one, the adults deliver the same silent message. Enough, and here's the irony. He's not asking to annoy anyone. He's asking because his brain is wired for it. Psychologists say curiosity activates the same reward center as chocolate or winning a game. In other words, asking why literally feels good. But adults? They treat it like noise pollution. The boy tests it. He asks his uncle at dinner, why do people drink beer if it tastes bad? The table freezes. Awkward laughter. then a sharp, "Don't be rude." He asks his grandmother, "What happens when you die?" She gasps, "Shoo, don't talk about that." And with every reaction, his mind absorbs a new, painful lesson. Curiosity is dangerous. This is how silence sneaks in. Not all at once, but drip by drip. Adults don't say, "Stop being curious." They just roll their eyes, change the subject, and punish the spark with boredom. And slowly, the boy feels the walls closing in. Maybe you felt that too. Maybe you stopped asking questions in English class because someone laughed at your accent. Maybe you stopped raising your hand at work because someone called it dumb. One little wall, then another. Until you sit quietly, pretending you don't wonder anymore. The boy doesn't fully understand yet, but he senses it. Adults have traded their wonder for comfort. They don't ask because it's easier not to. Silence feels safer, but here's the cruel punchline. Silence doesn't protect you. It just starves you. Losing the spark. One morning, the boy wakes up and decides not to ask. Not because he's out of questions. His head is still buzzing with them, like bees in a jar. But he remembers the sighs, the rolled eyes, the tired voices saying, "Enough." So he eats his breakfast in silence. He walks to the bus in silence. He sits in class, lips pressed shut. At first, the adults are relieved. Finally, he's calm, they whisper. But here's the dark joke. Calm is just another word for empty. His curiosity, once a bright lantern, flickers. He starts to notice what he hadn't before. Adults rarely ask anything. Not the teacher, not his parents, not even the people on the bus. They just do. Work. Eat. Sleep. Repeat. Science has a name for this: the curiosity decline. Studies show kids questioning peaks around age 4 and drops like a stone after they start school. Why? Because questions make life messy. And humans love tidy routines more than they love mystery. The boy feels the weight of that routine. His days get quieter, but not happier. He misses the thrill of chasing answers, even the silly ones. He misses the laughter when his questions confused people. And slowly, he begins to believe the unspoken rule: grown-ups don't ask. Grown-ups already know, or they pretend to. This is the tragedy hidden in plain sight. The very spark that drives learning, creativity, even language practice, curiosity, is the first thing we trade away when we grow up. The boy doesn't know the word tragedy yet. But he feels it, like a cold draft sneaking under the door. And here's the cruel irony. When he stops asking, the world stops answering. The rediscovery. One rainy afternoon in Copenhagen, the boy sits on a park bench, kicking puddles with his shoes. He's quieter than usual, questions stuck in his throat. Beside him, an old man with a cane feeds crumbs to pigeons. The boy stares. Then, almost against his will, he blurts out, "Why don't pigeons get bored of bread?" The old man chuckles, eyes twinkling. Instead of shushing him, he leans closer. "Good question. Maybe the bread changes every time. Or maybe the pigeons don't care about boredom like we do." The boy blinks. Finally, someone answered without shutting the door. The boy asks another. And another. To his surprise, the old man doesn't sigh or roll his eyes. He laughs. He wonders out loud. Sometimes he even says, "I don't know, but isn't it fun to imagine?" For the first time in weeks, the boy feels his spark flicker back to life. Here's the beauty. Neuroscience shows that curiosity is contagious. When one person wonders, the brain of the listener lights up too, like two candles passing flame. The old man, by choosing wonder over silence, reignites the boy's engine, and then comes the punchline. The old man leans on his cane and says, "Never stop asking, kid." Questions are not annoyances, they're proof you're alive. The moment you stop asking, you stop living. The boy feels it in his bones. Adults may have traded away their spark, but maybe he doesn't have to. Maybe curiosity isn't childish, it's human. And maybe the only way to grow isn't by answering everything, but by never stopping the questions. For the first time, silence doesn't win. Wonder does. Closing reflection. The story of the boy is simple, but the question it leaves behind is heavy. When did you stop asking about life? Was it in school, when your hand shot up but the teacher rolled her eyes? Was it at work, when your boss said, "Don't overthink"? Or was it in English class, when you swallowed your voice because you were scared of sounding wrong? Curiosity is not just for children. It's the very fuel that keeps your brain awake, your language alive, your spirit unbroken. Without questions, learning becomes memorizing. Without wonder, speaking becomes repeating. And without curiosity, life becomes a loop, safe, quiet, and painfully flat. But here's the twist. It's never too late to start again. You don't need a classroom or a perfect accent. You just need the courage to ask, out loud, in English, even if it's messy. Ask your phone, ask your friends, ask the world, why? What if? How? Every question is a spark, and every spark keeps you alive. So let this boy from Denmark remind you, silence is not maturity, it's surrender. And every time you dare to ask, you're not just practicing English, you're reclaiming the part of you that refused to settle, because in the end, fluency doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from never losing the questions. A curious child in Denmark never stops asking questions, until silence teaches him to stop. This slow English story will help you practice listening, reading, and speaking while reminding you to stay curious and never give up on learning.